There is a kind of darkness that feels older than memory, as if it has been waiting inside the walls for 100 winters. And tonight you are about to step into it. Before we let ourselves drift along the slow river of the past, if you find a little calm here, if these quiet stories soften your thoughts, you are warmly welcome to leave a gentle like and subscribe, so we can meet again in the next historical dream, as the night carries us onward. For now, simply settle your body where it is. Let your shoulders ease down, as if a heavy cloak has been lifted from them. Let your jaw loosen and allow your tongue to rest quietly, not pressing, not reaching, just resting. If your hands are holding any tension, let your fingers uncurl a little, like leaves opening in the shade. You do not have to do anything quickly. Everything can move at the pace of a candle flame. And now, very slowly, imagine a morning that is not your morning. You wake in England, in the 1870s, in a bedroom that belongs to a Victorian house. You do not wake to the familiar small lights of modern life. There is no blinking dot from a charger, no quiet glow from a street lamp filtered through curtains. There is only the old, thick absence of light, a darkness that is not empty, but full of fabric and wood and dust, full of the quiet weight of a house that has been standing still for a very long time. The first thing you notice is the air. It is cold, and it is heavy, and it has a taste, not unpleasant, not sharp, simply unfamiliar. When you breathe in, you catch a faint trace of coal dust, as if the house has been warmed by fire and smoke so often that the very boards remember it. There is the soft sweetness of beeswax, the kind that clings to polished furniture. There is a dry, old paper note, like the inside of a closed drawer, and beneath it all, a persistent mustiness, the scent of thick curtains and rugs that have absorbed seasons and breath and time. Your breath leaves your lips in a small cloud, quickly fading into the dark. It is winter, or it feels like winter. The room is unheated, and even a wealthy home is not warm before the morning fires are lit. You are wrapped in heavy blankets, layers of wool and quilted fabric that press gently against your body, and yet the cold still finds the edges of you, your shoulders, your ankles, the back of your neck, where the nightgown is thin. The mattress beneath you is not soft in the way you are used to. It does not cradle. It does not yield with kind, modern patience. Instead, it resists, lumpy and honest. Horsehair stuffed into ticking fabric, with a faint scratchy firmness, and beneath that, springs that are real metal, not hidden, not polite. When you shift your weight, the bed answers with a small creak, a quiet complaint from wood and iron. The sheets are coarser, like they were made to last rather than to soothe. And when you move your hand across them, you feel the faint rustle of something else, something dry and crisp, straff, some Victorian stuffed straw into mattresses. Not for luxury, but for practicality, to add bulk, to add a kind of rough cushioning. The thought is strange at first, and then it becomes oddly simple. In this room, everything is practical first, and comfortable second, and if comfort comes at all, it comes later, when the day has done its work. You lie still for a moment, not rushing. The darkness is complete enough that you cannot see the shape of the wardrobe. or the chair, or the washstand. You can only feel the room, the way you feel a place when your eyes cannot help you. You sense high ceilings. You sense thick walls. You sense that somewhere, beyond the plaster and timber, the world is quiet and cold. And then you hear it, a faint sound, not alarming, simply precise. Footsteps, light, quick, purposeful. A soft rhythm on wooden stairs, not the heavy stride of a hurried person, but the practice movement of someone who has done the same task every morning, in every season, without question. As the footsteps draw nearer, a thin line of light appears beneath the door. Not electric light, not wide and even, but the trembling glow of a candle. It wavers and breathes, as if the light itself is alive. The door opens with a gentle complaint, a small creak from old hinges, and a figure appears in the doorway. A young housemaid in a plain dark dress, with a white apron tied neatly at her waist. Her hair is pinned back, practical and tidy. In her hand she holds a candle in a hole, and the flame throws a warm glow over her fingers and over the edge of the doorframe. The light turns the darkness into shapes. It reveals the outline of the room, the edge of a fireplace, the pale gleam of a mirror, the heavy folds of drapery. She does not burst in. She enters with the quiet courtesy of someone trained to be unseen, even when she is standing right there. Her voice is soft, respectful, careful. "Good morning, ma'am," she says, and her accent is gentle, her words measured. It is 6. It feels strange to be greeted like that, in a room you do not recognize, in a body that is yours and yet not yours, as if you have borrowed a life for the night. You might want to speak. You might want to ask questions. But the atmosphere does not encourage sudden speech. The house itself seems to ask for calm, for patience, for observation. The maid moves toward the fireplace. You watch her, and the simple act becomes a small ritual. She kneels, and you hear the faint whisper of fabric against the floorboards. She lays kindling with quick, practiced hands, thin sticks, arranged like a careful nest. She adds coal, dark chunks that look dull in the candlelight. Then she strikes a match, and you catch the brief flare and the scent of sulfur, sharp and momentary. A spark, a breath, and then the first small flame. It is not dramatic. It is modest, steady, almost shy. But it catches, and within minutes the fire begins to speak. A quiet crackle, a soft pop, a gentle rush of warm air that starts to push back the cold. Not all at once, but slowly, like a tide. You listen to it, and the sound is soothing in a way you did not expect. Fire is a living sound, and in an old house, it is the voice of comfort. The maid glances over her shoulder, as if checking that all is well. Cook says breakfast will be at 8. She tells you. And then, with that same careful politeness, she asks if you will be wanting a bath this morning. A bath in your mind. The word brings a modern image, private and easy. But here, the word carries weight. It means work. It means buckets. It means water carried upstairs. Hot water that must be heated and hauled, and a metal tub placed close to the fire. It means the presence of servants, the lack of privacy, the strange intimacy of being assisted simply because the world has been built that way. You find yourself answering gently. No, thank you. Just some water for washing, please. The maid nods, as if she expected that, then slips out with quiet steps, leaving the door nearly closed behind her. Now the room is not fully dark. The fire gives a low orange glow. The candlelight has faded down the hallway, but the warmth remains in your memory like a hand briefly placed on the shoulder. You can see enough now to take in the shapes of the Victorian room. The fireplace is simple but solid. The mantel is carved. The wallpaper is patterned, though in the dim light it is only a suggestion of vines and flowers. There's a washstand, a bassin, a pitcher, and a mirror with glass that does not reflect perfectly. It reflects like water, faintly wavy, as if the world here refuses to be entirely sharp. You sit up slowly. The blankets slide, heavy and thick. The wool has a smell, faintly sheepish, faintly smoky, like it has been warmed near fires many times. Your body feels slightly different in the cold. Your shoulders hunch, and you let them fall again, reminding yourself that the night is quiet, that nothing demands speed. Your feet find the floor, bare wood, cold as ice, even through the thin fabric of a nightgown. You inhale and let it out slowly. The cold is immediate, but it is also honest. It tells you exactly where you are, not in a soft, modern room with hidden heating, but in a house that must be warmed room by room, flame by flame. You take one careful step, then another, and you notice how the house speaks under your movement. A faint creak, a small shift in the boards, as if the building is acknowledging you. When you reach the washstand, you pause at the mirror. Your reflection is dim in the low light, and the glass softens the edges of your face, giving you a dreamlike look. You lift a hand and touch your cheek, feeling the coolness of your skin. The air dries your lips slightly. You remember how easy it is to take warmth for granted. How easy it is to forget that for most of human history. Comfort has been earned with labor. A moment latte, you hear steps again, and the maid returns with a porcelain pitcher and a basin. The water she pours steams faintly, and you feel the warmth rising like a small blessing. She sets a towel neatly, as if arranging a stage for the day. Her hands are quick, practiced, and you notice them as she moves. The skin looks slightly rough, slightly red at the knuckles. Hands that scrub, that haul, that work with harsh soap and cold water. Hands that keep a house alive. Will there be anything else? Ma'am, she asks. No, thank you. You answer, and she gives a small curtsy and leaves you again. Now you are alone with the beginning of a Victorian day. The fire crackles quietly. The room is still cold, but not as cold. The steam from the basin drifts upward, and the scent of hot water and plain soap seems to clear the air a little, like a soft curtain lifting. You rest your fingertips on the edge of the basin and let your shoulders loosen once more. And only now. Only after you've arrived in the scene and let it settle around you, you may allow your eyelids to grow heavier, if they wish to. Not forced, not commanded, simply allowed. You can keep them open and watch the small movements of light on the walls, or you can let them close for a moment and listen to the sound of the fire. Either way, the house will remain patient, quiet, waiting, and the day, the slow Victorian day, will unfold at its own unhurried pace. The morning continues with a softness that comes from routine. In this world, time is kept by small sounds rather than screens. The faint tick of a clock somewhere beyond the wall, the fire's gentle crackle, as if it is chewing slowly on coal, the distant murmur of the house waking up, not with alarms, but with footsteps and doors, and the quiet industry of people beginning their duties before the sun has fully claimed the windows. You stand by the washstand and look down at the basin. The porcelain is cool and smooth beneath your fingers. The water is hot enough to send up a thin breath of steam, and you hold your hands over it for a moment, letting the warmth gather in your palms. It is such a small comfort, and it feels surprisingly intimate, as if you are borrowing warmth from a different century. You take the cloth, dampen it, and bring it to your face. The water is clean, but it has a faint taste of the house, a mineral note, as if it has travelled through pipes that have held this city's water for years. You do not think too hard about it. You simply wash, slow circles at the cheeks, the forehead, the throat. The simple act becomes calming because it is simple, because it is quiet, because it does not ask you to be anything except present. On the washstand sits a bar of soap. It is not pretty. It is not scented with lavender or rose in any delicate way. It is hard and yellowish, and the scent is sharp, like lye, like something that was made to clean, not to charm. When you rub it between your fingers, it grips the skin, leaving a thin, slippery layer that rinses away with the warm water. You dry your face with the towel. The fabric is thick and slightly rough, more linen than softness, more durability than luxury. You feel your skin warm beneath it, and for a moment you are simply a person drying their face at the start of a day, which is the same in every century, and yet different in every detail. Then there is the practical thought that arrives quietly, like a cat stepping into a room. You need the bathroom. Your eyes move around the bedroom, and you do not see what you would expect. There is no tiled room, no closed door with plumbing beyond it. The house offers no obvious solution, and that in itself feels like a gentle reminder of how new modern ease really is. You glance down toward the bed, and there, tucked discreetly beneath, is the answer, the chamber pot. It is simple, plain, fonctionnel, a small object that carries a kind of humility. In a Victorian home, even a fine one, private toilets were not always close at hand. Indoor plumbing existed, yes, in some places, in some houses, but the habits of older centuries lingered. People adapted slowly. Houses learned slowly. You pause. There is a slight awkwardness in the thought of it, a modern discomfort, and yet the house is not judging you. The past does not laugh. It simply waits, as the past always does, patient and unmoving. You decide, for now, to wait. Perhaps there is a water closet somewhere on this floor, perhaps down the hall. Perhaps the house contains a secret little room with a pull chain and a ceramic bowl, a small miracle of Victorian invention. But before you search, you look toward the chair where your clothes are laid out. They are not simply clothes, they are architecture, layers and layers. Petticoats, undergarments, and a corset that looks like a puzzle made of fabric and laces. And the dress itself, heavy and structured, made to shape the body into the era's idea of propriety. You can almost feel the weight of it already, as if the fabric carries not only thread, but expectation. In the modern world, you dress for yourself, for comfort, for weather, for your own movement. Here, you dress for the room you will enter, the eyes that might see you, the rules that have been agreed upon by society without ever being written on the wall. Clothing is not only clothing. It is a language. You lift the first layer carefully. The fabric is cool. It smells faintly of starch and storage, like something kept in a drawer. You step into it, and the act feels slow because it must be slow. There is no rushing when you have so many layers to negotiate. Then you reach for the corset. It is structured and stubborn. The boning holds its shape, insisting that your body will match it, not the other way round. You try to lace it, and immediately you understand the problem. The laces are behind you. They want two hands, and preferably a second person. Someone practiced, someone who can pull evenly and tie firmly. You manage to fasten it loosely, more a suggestion than the true Victorian tightness. And you breathe carefully, testing your ribs. The corset changes the way air enters your lungs. It encourages shallow breaths. It encourages stillness. It makes you aware of your own body in a way that feels both strange and oddly ceremonial. You add petticoats. Each layer makes a soft whisper as it settles. Fabric against fabric. A gentle rustle like dry leaves, but not quite. You step into the dress, and the weight of it falls around you. A quiet heaviness that brushes your ankles. You cannot fasten it properly. Not alone. Not quickly. Buttons and hooks sit just out of reach, as if the garment was designed with the assumption that someone else will always be there. That is part of the world you have entered. A world built on roles, on service, on the invisible hands that keep comfort running. You look at yourself again in the wavy mirror. You look like a person in a portrait. Someone paused in the act of living. The shapes are different. The silhouette is different. But the eyes are the same eyes. The same awareness behind them, quietly observing. The fire has warmed the room slightly now, not enough to be cozy, but enough that the cold is no longer biting. It sits at the edges like a polite guest, waiting to return when the fire dies down. You walk to the bedroom door. As you move, the skirts shift with a sound that is almost soothing, a soft swish, a gentle brushing. Your steps are smaller in this clothing. Your posture changes. Your shoulders settle back, not from pride, but from necessity, because the corset encourages it, and the dress demands it. You place your hand on the doorknob. The metal is cold, the kind of cold that lingers in old houses, in shaded corridors, in places where the sun cannot easily reach. Before you open it, you listen. The house is awake now. You can hear faint activity below, a door closing gently, the distant clink of something in the kitchen, a muffled voice, low and businesslike, the language of morning duties. The sound is not loud. It is simply there, like the slow breathing of a living creature. You open the door. The hallway beyond is dim, but not dark. There is a different quality of air out there, cooler, less touched by fire. The wallpaper pattern is visible even in the low light, rich, and intricate, vines and flowers woven into repeating shapes. The carpet runner stretches down the corridor like a path, softening footsteps, guiding movement. You step out, and as you do, you feel the subtle shift that comes with leaving a private room and entering the shared body of the house. The bedroom was yours for the night. The corridor belongs to everyone, to the family's routines, to the servants' careful movements, to the quiet rules that hover in the air like dust motes. You take one slow breath, and with the next, you begin to walk gently into the Victorian morning, toward whatever the house will reveal next. One quiet detail at a time, you step into the hallway, and the first thing you notice is not what you see, but what you feel. The air outside your bedroom is cooler, as if the warmth of your small fire has been politely kept behind the door. It brushes your cheeks with a faint chill, and it carries a different blend of scents. Less soap and linen now, more old wood, more varnish, more the quiet breath of a house that has been lived in by many strangers. Year after year, season after season, the corridor is long enough to feel important and narrow enough to feel intimate. The carpet runner stretches along the floor like a softened path, its edges worn smooth where feet have passed 1,000 times. The boards beneath are firm. When you place your weight down, the house answers with a tiny creak, not loud, just a reminder that this place is made of timber and nails, not silent plastic and concrete. The wallpaper is rich, patterned, and almost lavish in its confidence. In the dimness, it looks like deep green, threaded with gold accents that catch what little light there is and hold it for a moment. The pattern repeats in a disciplined rhythm. Vines, leaves, stylized blooms, as if nature has been trained to behave. You can imagine the pride a Victorian homeowner would feel, showing this corridor to a visitor, letting them see the taste and expense pressed into every inch of surface. And yet, beneath the beauty, your mind remembers a quiet fact. Green, in this era, can be dangerous. Not because anyone intended harm, not because the walls are wicked, only because chemistry arrived before caution did, and color was beloved more than knowledge. You do not need to panic. You simply let the thought rest in the background, like a small pebble at the bottom of a river. The wallpaper may be made with pigments that contain arsenic, names like Shields green or Paris green, spoken softly now, like the title of a secret. In certain conditions, damp or heat can coax tiny traces into the air, invisible as breath, ebullient as dust. So you do what any careful dreamer would do. You do not touch the walls. You do not lean your cheek against the pattern. You simply walk through, letting the beauty remain on the surface, where it belongs. As you move, your clothing makes its own gentle sound. The skirts whisper against your ankles. The layers settle and resettle with each step. The corset encourages you to stand tall, not from pride, but from structure. It changes the way you breathe. Your breaths become slower, measured, more deliberate. And that, strangely, suits the house. The Victorian rooms seem to like measured things, measured speech, measured footsteps, measured gestures. You pass framed pictures on the wall. though in this light you can only see shapes, dark rectangles, pale ovals where faces might be. You pass a small table with a vase that holds dried flowers, brittle and faded, and a faint scent of old petals that still lingers, as if the flowers were once loved. At the far end of the corridor, the staircase waits. In a Victorian home, stairs are not just stairs. They are a theatre. The main staircase, the one guests see, is meant to impress. The banister is polished to a soft shine from countless hands. The spindles are carved, each one repeating the same refined shape. The steps are wide enough for a dress to travel down with dignity, and the curve of the stair seems to invite a slow descent, like a graceful ritual. But you also know, somewhere behind this public beauty, there are other stairs, servants' stairs, narrower, steeper, more hurried, often uneven, because no one of importance was meant to linger there. Those hidden roots are where ankles twist, where hands slip, where a small misstep becomes a day of pain. The house has two bodies, in a way, the elegant body shown to the world, and the working body that does the heavy lifting in the shadows. You place your hand on the banister. The wood is cool under your palm, and the polish feels slightly waxy, smelling faintly of beeswax and oil. You take one step down, then another, and you notice the way sound changes. Upstairs, everything felt hushed and close. Here, above the entrance hall, air moves differently. Your footsteps echo a little, softened by carpet, yet still present, still real. As you descend, you see the lower floor come into view. Heavy curtains hang over tall windows, holding back the morning light as if the house prefers its own dimness. In the entrance hall, the walls are decorated with restraint, not plain, not bare, but orderly. A hat stand waits by the door like a quiet sentinel. A mirror reflects the dim hall in a wavy blur. A small table holds a dish for keys, perhaps, or calling cards, those tiny rectangles of identity that once carried social life on their stiff paperbacks. Along the wall, gas lamps wait in their brackets, even unlit. They have a presence. Glass shades, metal fittings, small valves that control the flow of gas. When they are lit, they will flicker and glow, turning the hall into a warm amber space. But your mind keeps that second, quieter truth near gas lighting brought convenience, and also risk. Lakes, faint fumes, the possibility of headaches, dizziness, and, in the worst cases, a sleep that becomes too deep. The lamps are not evil. They are simply early versions of something familiar, like the first draft of modern comfort. You let that thought be gentle. You let it be part of the atmosphere, not a sharp point. And then, as you reach the bottom of the stairs, you catch another sensation drifting toward you, curling through the corridor like a friendly ribbon. A smell from the kitchen, bacon, rich and warm, fresh bread, slightly sweet, coffee, dark and bitter, perhaps tea as well, faintly floral, faintly tannic. Your stomach answers with a small, honest rumble. Whatever century you wake up in, the body still understands warmth and food. You follow the scent down a hallway. The house becomes a series of rooms passed like slow images in a dream. A formal dining room, grand and slightly severe, with a long table that could seat 12 and polished chairs standing like silent attendants. A cabinet of china, silver that gleams faintly, even in low light. A fireplace that will be lit later, when visitors might arrive. When appearances matter, then you reach a morning room, smaller, cozier, designed for family comfort rather than display. The light is softer here. The furniture looks like it has been used, not merely posed. A small table is set for breakfast, and even before you sit, you feel the rhythm of the house guiding you. This is where you belong at this hour. This is what a Victorian day expects. You pause, just for a moment, at the threshold of the room. If your eyes are growing heavy, you can let them soften now. Not fully closing, not yet, just softening. The day is still unfolding, but it unfolds slowly, like pages turning in a thick book. And with that softness, you step in and allow the house to show you the next quiet layer of its life. The morning room holds warmth the way fabric holds perfume, gently. Stubbornly, in small pockets, the breakfast table is set with a care that feels ceremonial. Silver dishes sit over little flames, keeping food warm in a way that is both clever and faintly delicate. The silver reflects the room in small curved distortions, like miniature mirrors. Plates are arranged precisely. A napkin lies folded as if it has been taught good manners. And in the center, the meal itself waits with Victorian confidence. This is not the light bowl of yogurt or a single slice of toast you might choose in your own time. It is a spread that suggests a world where calories are protection, where a hearty meal is considered a kind of medicine against cold, damp, and fatigue. Eggs, bacon, sausages, perhaps fish, pale and steaming, toast and muffins, jam that glows darkly in a small dish, and a pot of coffee that smells strong enough to wake a whole house. You sit down slowly, feeling the weight of your clothes as you lower yourself into the chair. The corset makes the movement careful. The skirts arrange themselves with a sighing rustle, and as soon as you are seated, a maid appears, almost as if she has been waiting behind the edge of the room, ready to step forward the moment you take your place. Her presence is quiet, professional, practiced. She pours coffee into your cup, the dark liquid steaming gently. The scent is rich, but when you take your first sip, you understand immediately that this coffee is not the smooth, carefully brewed kind you may know. It is bitter, almost sharp. It tastes like something meant to be economical. In this era, coffee is often stretched. Chicory, burnt sugar, substitutes used to make expensive beans last longer. It is not meant to be a luxury for the tongue. It is meant to be fuel. You swallow slowly, letting the warmth spread down into your chest. Tea is offered too. Of course, in Victorian England, tea is not merely a drink. It is a habit, a pause, a social punctuation mark. But the coffee is already in your cup, and you let it sit there, steaming as if it is a small black mirror reflecting time. The maid's hands catch your attention as she moves. They are red at the knuckles, slightly cracked, the skin roughened by constant water and harsh soap. It is a detail that feels small, but it opens a quiet door into the hidden life of the house. Servants carry coal and water. They scrub floors. They polish silver with chemical pastes. They wash linens in scalding water. They breathe dust and fumes day after day. The elegant calm you experience in this room is built on work that you do not see. It makes your own movements slower, gentler, as if you do not want to add weight to their burden. You reach for a piece of toast. The bread looks fine. It smells fine. Yet your mind, now tuned to the strange logic of Victorian danger, remembers another whisper of truth. Food adulteration is common in this era. Flour can be whitened with alum or chalk. Milk can be improved by borax, not to kill bacteria, but to hide spoilage. Sausages might contain fillers that stretch meat too far. Tea can be bulked out, coloured, even made to look darker with odd additions. None of these things are visible. That is what makes them unsettling. They are hidden dangers, tucked inside ordinary life, wrapped in familiarity, as invisible as the arsenic in wallpaper or the gas in pipes. So you eat carefully. A small bite of egg, soft and warm. A little toast with jam. You avoid the milk. You watch the coffee's surface tremble slightly as you set the cup down. You listen to the quiet sounds of the room, the faint clink of a spoon, the soft tread of a servant's shoes, the distant murmur of the kitchen working like a heart behind walls. Through the window, you can see the garden. Morning light touches the grass, pale and cool. A gardener is already at work, bending orbis, moving with steady rhythm. There is something soothing about watching someone tend plants. The repetition, the small care, the slow patience that gardens require. It reminds you that even in a century full of industrial smoke and chemical experiments, nature still insists on its own pace. And then another gentle interruption arrives. The maid asks about visitors. Calling cards have been delivered. Calling cards are such a Victorian thing, small rectangles of paper, thick and crisp, carrying a name like a tiny formal bow. To receive a calling card is to receive a message. I was here. I made the effort. I obeyed the rules of contact. Even friendship is structured, scheduled, proven. You are not ready for that. Not yet. You say you will go for a walk instead. Fresh air sounds like a blessing, like a way to rinse your mind after all these hidden worries. The maid, without surprise, asks if you would like your walking costume prepared. Walking costume. The phrase is almost amusing in its seriousness, yet it is also perfectly logical here. Clothing is divided by function. One outfit for morning, one for receiving callers, one for walking, one for dinner, one for sleep. The day is made of costume changes, and each change is a signal to the world about what you are doing and who you are meant to be. Soon the maid returns, and dressing becomes a ritual again, layer by layer, as if you are being wrapped in the era itself. A chemise. The corset tightened more properly now. The lace is drawn with practiced hands. You breathe through the tightening, not fighting, just adjusting, letting your ribs find a new shape. Petticoats settle with soft rustles. The walking dress goes on dark, structured, with a bustle that changes the way you sit and move. A jacket that fits, close. A skirt that brushes the floor. Your hat is placed on your head, decorated modestly, perhaps with feathers. Gloves are offered, soft kid leather, smelling faintly animal and polish. A parasol is placed in your hand, not only fashion, but protection, pale skin as a sign of class, a sign that you do not work outdoors. When you look at yourself in the wavy mirror again, you do not quite recognize the silhouette. You look like someone who belongs to a painting, someone who has learned to move carefully, someone whose world is built from etiquette and fabric and unspoken rules. And then you leave the morning room and head toward the front door. Outside, the street is already alive. Horses pass, their hooves making a steady clip-clop on the cobblestones, a rhythm that feels older than engines. Carriages roll by, wheels creaking. A vendor calls out, selling flowers. The scent of damp stems and earth briefly cutting through coal smoke. Children play in an alley, their laughter quick and bright. And you notice how even their clothes tell stories. Some worn, some patched, some too thin for the cold. The air holds soot. Coal smoke from thousands of chimneys drifts like a constant veil over the city. It catches in the throat slightly. It settles on windowsills. It stains lace curtains over time. In the Victorian world, smoke is not an occasional thing. It is a daily atmosphere. The street holds mud and manure, and yet, beneath the grime and danger, there is beauty too. The architecture, the ironwork, the way morning light strikes brick and makes it glow softly, the way people nod politely as they pass, acknowledging you with a restrained kindness, as if everyone is agreeing to keep the world orderly. Even if the world is messy beneath, you walk carefully, lifting your skirt slightly as you step. Your movements find a rhythm. The corset makes you breathe slowly. The parasol's handle rests steadily in your palm. The cold air cools your cheeks, and for a moment you feel almost peaceful, as if fresh air can sweep away every hidden worry. But as you walk, your mind quietly reviews the dangers you have already touched in only a few hours. The cold bedroom, the lumpy horsehair mattress and straw, the chamber pot under the bed, the arsenic green wallpaper waiting in the corridor, the gas lamps with their invisible risks, the milk that might not be safe, the food that might be improved by strange powders, the servants' hands cracked by labor, the way beauty and danger sit together like two guests at the same table. It is a wonder anyone survived. And yet, millions did. They survived because they had no choice. And because humans are remarkably adaptable, they lived inside their risks the way fish live inside water, not always aware, simply moving forward day after day. They did not know what we know. They could not name carbon monoxide or bacterial toxins with the clarity we can. They only knew pattern, headaches, faintness, illness that came and went, tragedy that was accepted with a kind of weary faith. As you walk, your shoulders begin to soften, not because the dangers are gone, but because your body is settling into the story. And that is the quiet magic of these sleep journeys. Even the unsettling details become gentle when they are described slowly, when they are held at a distance, when the voice remains calm. Soon you turn back toward the house. Your feet find the familiar path. The grand facade comes into view again. Tall windows, ornate detailing, a confidence in brick and stone that suggests permanence, even though everything human is temporary. At the front step, you notice a small metal tool near the door, a boot scraper, practical and unglamorous, a reminder that Victorian elegance depended on constant cleaning. You scrape your boots, and the sound is small, metallic, crisp. Then you step inside again, into the dim entrance hall, into the hush of thick curtains and carpet runner, into the slow breath of the house. And as the door closes behind you, the outside world fades. The firelight in distant rooms feels warmer now. The day has shifted. The morning has become something deeper, something slower, as if the house is preparing to reveal more of its secrets in its own patient time. If your eyelids feel heavy now, you can let them rest, just for a moment, because the story will continue either way, quietly, steadily, like footsteps on a wooden stair. You return to the front step with a quieter breath, as if the street has rinsed the inside of your mind. The iron boot scraper waits by the threshold, blunt and practical. You draw one shoe across it, then the other, listening to the small metallic rasp. In the Victorian world, even cleanliness has a sound. When you push the door open, the house receives you with its familiar dimness. Heavy curtains keep the winter light at a respectful distance. The entrance hall smells faintly of coal smoke and polished wood, with an undertone of damp wool. Your footsteps soften on the runner, and the air feels still, as if the rooms are holding their breath between one duty and the next. A maid takes your coat and hat with quiet hands. She moves as though she has learned to be gentle with objects, because objects in this house are expensive. And because noise is discouraged, somewhere deeper inside, a door closes, and the sound is padded, as if the house is lined with velvet. In the drawing room, the fire is awake now, not roaring, not demanding, only crackling at a steady pace. The heat gathers at your shins and ankles first, and you feel your body begin to unclench in small, polite increments. A clock ticks on the mantelpiece, patient and regular, each tick like a tiny stitch in the fabric of the day. A maid arrives with a silver tray. Mail, she says, and the newspaper. The paper is thick and slightly rough, smelling of ink and damp air. It is dated May 1878, a date that sits in your mind like a pin on a map, fixing you gently in time. No headline mentions you. Of course, history continues as if your waking here is perfectly ordinary. You unfold the newspaper slowly. The pages make a papery sigh, and the columns feel dense, crowded, confident. Parliament debates, foreign tensions, shipping notices, society announcements, advertisements for tonics and soaps and patent cures. Your eyes travel over words that belong to a living present, even though, to you, they are the past. It is a strange sensation, like standing inside a photograph and hearing it breathe. Alongside the paper are envelopes and a couple of calling cards. Names printed in a careful hand. Evidence of social life, of expectation, of the quiet pressure to be seen at the right hours in the right rooms. You set them down without opening them. Not from rudeness, but from fatigue. In this century, politeness is a discipline, and discipline can be tiring. Cook would like your preferences for dinner. The maid adds, you choose the safest answer. Whatever cook recommends, the maid nods, satisfied. The household moves on, as it always does, fed by routines that do not require your full understanding. You sit back in the armchair, and the chair accepts you the way old furniture does. Firm at first, then accommodating. The upholstery has a faint, dusty sweetness, like dried flowers stored too long. You let the warmth from the fire climb slowly into your ribs. It is not difficult to imagine why people in this era gathered around fireplaces like pilgrims around a shrine. The Victorian room is beautiful in an abundant way. Every surface hosts something: framed photographs, small sculptures, vases, boxes, books, ornaments. The Victorians loved their things. They collected objects the way some people collect memories, building comfort out of visible proof that life has weight and texture. You notice on a small table a powder box and a delicate brush. It is easy to imagine a lady dabbing her face to look pale and composed. And then you remember, quietly, that some powders in this era could contain lead, and some rouges could be made with mercury pigments. Beauty, in certain Victorian corners, was not always gentle to the body. It is a thought you hold without alarm, the way you might notice a thorn on a rose and still admire the flower. There is a knock, soft and precise, and a maid asks whether you will receive visitors. 2 cards have already arrived. You imagine the ritual, a caller in the front room. Introductions. Yeah, careful conversation that never steps too near truth. You decline for now, and the maid accepts the answer as if she has been trained not to wonder. You rise, because curiosity is sometimes the gentlest form of courage. Your corset makes you rise carefully. The skirts follow a second later. Whispering, you move toward a doorway that leads into a library. The transition is like stepping into a cooler thought. The library smells of leather and old paper and beeswax. Shelves climb to the ceiling, filled with volumes bound in dark colors. The spines are stamped with gold lettering, some worn smooth by hands that once turned pages under lamplight. A globe stands in the corner, the British Empire washed in pink across oceans and continents. In a glass case sit curiosities, shells, fossils, a stuffed exotic bird. Its feathers hold color as if they have refused to fade, and you can almost believe it will blink. Taxidermy is fashionable, and the Victorians loved bringing nature indoors. But permanence has a price. To preserve feathers and fur, arsenic soaps and other harsh compounds were often used. Even decoration can carry poison, quietly, without malice. So you simply look, letting distance be your protection. On a writing desk sits an inkwell. The ink is dark and glossy. The dip pen rests on a blotter, and the blotter holds a half-finished letter in a flowing hand. You read a line or two. Garden plans. A visit from someone named Charlotte. The name catches in you like a soft thread, because it suggests a life you are temporarily wearing. The ink is iron gall ink, common in this era. It will bite the paper over time. Slowly, almost patiently. Old letters sometimes show holes where words once lived. You imagine the future discovering this page and finding it delicate, as if the past has always been fragile, even when it looked confident. A chiming clock tells you the hour, and you realize the house is fuller now. Servants cross corridors. Somewhere, pans clink. A kettle sings faintly. The day has a backbone of labor, and you feel it even when you cannot see it. You wander into a small business room where account books are kept. Ledgers line a shelf. They are heavy with numbers and the quiet truths of household management. Coal deliveries, wages for servants, groceries, fabric, candles, charity. The house is a machine that runs on money and labour, and the ledgers are its heartbeat written in ink. One entry mentions coal again, and you think of the dust. Coal warms the house, and coal also fills the air. It settles on lungs in invisible layers. Victorian cities learned this slowly. They will call it fog, but much of it is smoke, a beautiful grey veil that can become a sickness. In the corner stands a cabinet. When you open it, you do so with the same cautious curiosity you used with the wallpaper. Inside are bottles and tins of medicines and household remedies. Labels in ornate fonts promise relief, comfort, cure, a syrup for teething, a tonic for nerves, pills for complexion. It looks like care, and it is also, quietly, a hazard. You pick up a small bottle and read the words as if they are a spell. Soothing syrup, safe, gentle, and you remember, in the calm way remembering can happen, that some Victorian syrups for infants contain morphine, not as a cream, not as cruelty, but as medicine, because pain and sleep were not yet understood with modern caution. In this century, a quiet bottle can hold a very strong silence. Some of the other remedies are tinctures of opium. Some contain alcohol strong enough to numb. Some contain arsenic in tiny doses, sold as if poison could be a beauty aid. You can almost hear the logic of the time. If it does something, then it must be good. The century is learning, but it has not learned enough yet. You close the cabinet again, not slamming it, just closing it, as if you are tucking a dangerous thought back into a drawer. Outside the window, the afternoon light begins to soften. The day tilts toward noon and then onward, as if carried by slow hands. Lunch is served in the morning room. Cold meats, bread, cheese, fruit. You choose carefully, trusting what looks fresh. It is strange to notice how quickly the mind learns caution in a place where so much danger is invisible. You eat slowly, listening to the quiet of knives and plates, the soft presence of servants who appear and vanish like courteous ghosts. After lunch, you drift upstairs again. The main staircase feels safer than the back stairs, but you still move carefully. Your skirt brushes the steps. Your hand holds the banister. Each step is a small agreement between your body and the house. Upstairs, doors open onto other bedrooms, a guest room with its own wavy mirror, a spare room with a high bed that looks too proud to be comfortable. And then a nursery, cheerful at first glance, with toys and painted wood, and a small rocking horse that holds a bright, eager face. You stand in the nursery for a moment, letting the room settle in your senses. The air smells of soap and linen and something faintly sweet, perhaps a powder used on a child's skin. Alphabet blocks sit in a neat pile. A doll with a porcelain head stares with wide eyes. And you remember, softly, that the paints of this era often contain lead, white, green, white colors that could be made brilliant with substances that were never meant for tiny hands. It is not a horror story. It is simply the truth of a century still learning what safety means. Next you find a sewing room. A hand-cranked machine sits on a table, solid and proud. Baskets hold fabric, thread, needles. A piece of vivid green cloth catches your eye, and you let your gaze rest on it without touching. Dyes could hold arsenic too. Even cloth, even a ribbon, could carry chemistry that no one spoke of at tea. From the sewing room window, you see the garden again. The gardener moves through pale sunlight. You wonder what is in the spray bottle, what powders are mixed into the soil. Boris green, perhaps used as an insecticide. The same bright beauty, repurposed. The same quiet risk carried on the breeze. As you sit, you become aware of the room's air. Warm from the fire, yes, but also slightly heavy. Victorian rooms were often sealed against drafts. Curtains thick as blankets. Doors that fit tightly. Windows opened only when someone remembered the virtue of fresh air. You walk to the window and lift it a cautious inch. Cold air slips in, clean and sharp, and the change feels immediate, like rinsing your thoughts in clear water. The view outside is busy. Even in winter, a carriage passes. A boy runs with a bundle of newspapers. A woman in a shawl carries a basket close to her hip. The street is alive with hoof beats, wheels, and voices that never quite become words at this distance. Coal smoke drifts above the rooftops in slow ribbons. It makes the light softer, as if the sun is being filtered through gauze. Back inside, the maid brings a tray for afternoon tea. Not a grand meal, but a pause. A small pot, warm cups, thin slices of bread, perhaps a biscuit. Day, in this house, feels like a rule made, gentle. You wrap your hands around a cup and feel heat seep into your palms. The scent is familiar enough to calm you tannin. Steam, a hint of bergamot. For a moment, centuries do not matter. A warm drink is simply a warm drink. You notice the teapot's seams and imagine the solder. Lead was common in so many places, pipes, tanks, glazes. Water could sit in lead-lined cisterns. Milk could travel in questionable containers. A home could look clean and still deliver small, slow harm. The Victorians did not know, and you do not blame them. You simply sip, and you let the thought float away without clinging. After tea, you take a slow walk along the upstairs corridor again, as if you are learning the house by heart. Your fingers do not touch the wallpaper, but your eyes trace its repeating vines. In places the pattern fades, where damp has kissed it. The house has lived through winters before. It has absorbed breath and cooking and soot. It has held laughter and grief, and it holds you now, a temporary guest, as gently as it can. You find a small washroom at last, a water closet tucked away like a secret convenience. The room is narrow. A wooden seat rests over a ceramic bowl. Above it, the cistern waits, and a chain hangs down like a simple promise. You pull it and hear water rush, not quite the smooth sound of modern plumbing, but close enough to feel miraculous. You wash your hands in a small basin, The water is cold and the soap is harsh, and yet the act of washing feels comforting. The small certainty in an unfamiliar day. Even here, you remember the warnings. Early plumbing could carry sewer gases back into a house. Methane could build. A stray flame could meet it. Improvements will come later, with better traps and valves. For now, the Victorians live with inventions that are almost safe. Almost, but not always. You dry your hands and step out, breathing slowly, letting calm stay in front of every thought. By late afternoon, the light begins to fade. Winter shortens the day, and the house leans into shadow. You return to the drawing room and sit again near the fire. Your body feels heavier now, not with fear, but with hours. The rhythm of the century is slower, and it pulls you towards stillness. As the light thins, the servants begin to prepare the house for evening. You hear a soft procession of tasks, a drawer closing, a brush against fabric, the muted clink of coal being placed by a grate. The day does not end suddenly here. It is folded away, carefully, like linen. In the hallway, a maid turns the small key on a gas fixture. A flame catches, and the glass shade blooms into a warm, honeyed glow. Another lamp follows, then another. The house becomes golden, gentler, almost theatrical. And you remember, with the same soft caution you have been carrying all day, that gas can leak and fumes can creep. So you keep the thought quiet, like a hand resting on the edge of a table, steadying without gripping. The maid asks, with calm politeness, whether you will change for dinner. Of course, in this era, the body changes clothing the way a room changes light. You follow her upstairs. She loosens the day's buttons. She adjusts layers with practiced fingers, and you notice how much of Victorian comfort depends on someone else's hands. Even privacy is shared, simply because the clothing is too complex to manage alone. In the wardrobe, colors wait like jewels. Emerald greens, deep reds, brilliant whites. So beautiful. And sometimes you remember, so chemical. Dyes could hold arsenic. Cosmetics could hold lead. Even a fashionable hat might be trimmed with feathers treated in harsh solutions. You choose a darker, quieter dress, and the decision feels like choosing safety without making a scene. The curtains cradle the light. Gently, downstairs. The dining room waits with a patience that feels almost formal. The table is set for one, yet it looks as though 12 might arrive at any moment. Crystal catches the lamplight in small, quiet sparks. Silver lies beside your plate in careful ranks. Forks and spoons arranged with a logic that belongs to etiquette rather than appetite. You sit, and a footman steps forward, his expression composed into neutrality. A napkin is placed in your lap. A first course arrives, a clear soup that trembles faintly when the bowl is set down. The scent is mild, comforting, like warm broth meant to steady the body. You take slow spoonfuls, and the pace itself becomes soothing. Victorian meals are not hurried. They unfold like a program, one small scene after another. Then comes fish, pale and delicate. Then a slice of meat, tender, surrounded by vegetables, cooked until soft, then something sweet, a pudding that carries spice and warmth. Between courses, the footman moves in and out with silent precision. In a house like this, service is designed to be almost invisible. It is a strange kind of intimacy, being watched and cared for and never truly alone. You notice how the gaslight changes the room. It makes faces softer. It makes wood gleam. It makes the wallpaper look richer. And still, your mind keeps one gentle caution. Close gas is generous, and gas can betray. A faulty valve, a cracked pipe, a lamp left too high, headaches that arrive without explanation, sleep that becomes heavy in the wrong way. You breathe slowly and let calm be the thing that guides you. When dinner ends, you are offered coffee in the drawing room. You accept because it sounds like a softer room, a warmer corner. The fire is low now, but it still speaks in small crackles. Coffee arrives in a delicate cup, dark and bitter, and the warmth steadies your hand. Outside the windows, the winter night has thickened. Carriages are fewer. The street sounds are spaced farther apart. The house begins to feel like a ship at anchor in a dark sea. You notice on our side table a decanter of brandy, a nightcap, perhaps a small warmth in the throat. But you remember how Victorian spirits were sometimes adulterated, stretched, sweetened, altered. Profit could slip into a bottle the way smoke slips under a door. So you let the decanter remain untouched, and you keep your comfort simple, chosen from fewer risks. The footman withdraws, and you are left with the quieter sounds of the room. The tick of the clock, the hush of curtains, the soft collapse of a coal ember. In these small sounds, your mind begins to find a rhythm, not excitement, not suspense, only the slow, dependable pace of a house settling into night. The servants move through their closing rituals. They bank the fires. They check doors. They turn down lamps. They tidy rooms until the day's evidence is folded away. Somewhere above, bed linens are turned down. Somewhere below, the kitchen range is settled into quiet embers. The household breathes out. When you finally go upstairs, the corridor is lit more softly. Gas lamps are turned low, just enough to guide the eye. The carpet runner muffles your steps. Your skirts whisper. You feel the day on your shoulders, not as stress, but as weight, like a shawl that has been worn too long. In your bedroom, the maid helps you undress. Buttons loosen. Fabric slides away. The corset is unlaces with careful hands, and as it releases, your ribs expand as if they have been waiting all day for permission. You take one full breath, deep and honest, and the relief is almost tender. The nightgown is slipped over your head. Cotton, soft against your skin. The bed waits, high and solemn, dressed in quilts and heavy blankets. She lays out a dressing gown and slippers as if preparing a small nest for you. The gestures are ordinary to her. To you, they feel like reminders of how much labor is hidden behind comfort. A Victorian day, especially in a large home, is carried on the backs and hands of people who remain unseen in most portraits. Down the corridor, you can sense the servants' world. narrower stairs, plainer rooms, beds tucked under sloping ceilings. They will sleep lightly, because dawn will arrive early. Fires must be lit, water must be hauled, floors must be swept. In the quiet, you feel the inequality of the century like a draft through a closed door. You climb in and let the mattress receive you. Horsehair and straw, lumpy in places, firm in others. Not cruel, just unfamiliar. The sheets are coarser than you know. The pillow pricks faintly where a feather has worked its way through. The fire has dwindled to a quiet glow, and the room is mostly shadow. This is the true Victorian dark, thick and complete, with no small electronic lights blinking reassurance. At first, your mind keeps wandering over the house, room by room. Wallpaper, gas, paint, food, medicine. It is as if you have collected a pocketful of invisible dangers, and now you are gently turning them in your hand. But the longer you lie still, the more those thoughts begin to soften. They lose their sharp edges. They become part of the atmosphere, like the scent of coal smoke or the distant tick of the clock. Your breathing slows. The quilts press lightly against your body. The weight is comforting, the way a heavy blanket can be. The wind outside nudges the window frame, and the glass answers with a faint rattle. Old houses speak at night. They creak. They settle. They remind you that wood expands and contracts, that walls hold memories of heat and cold. Just as you begin to drift, a sound rises from somewhere below. A single bang, dull and sudden, not loud enough to be an explosion, not soft enough to ignore. Your eyes open, and your heart gives one quick, startled beat. Then, slowly, you listen. Silence follows. Perhaps a door catching a draft. Perhaps the house settling. Perhaps a coal scuttle shifting. In the Victorian night, many small things can make a sound, and not all sounds are threats. You wait until your breathing returns to its slow rhythm, and then you realize, with a quiet practicality, that you do not have the easy comforts of your own century. No bedside lamp, no bright screen, only a candle, and a box of matches if you can find them. You sit up, moving carefully so the bed does not squeak too loudly. Your nightgown brushes your knees. Your hand searches the bedside table. At last, your fingers find a matchbox. You strike a match. The flare is bright and brief, and the smell of sulfur rises, sharp and unmistakable. You light the candle quickly, and the flame steadies. In that small circle of light, the room looks softer. Shadows retreat. The pattern of the wallpaper becomes a quiet backdrop rather than a secret. The candle's glow is calmer than gaslight, and it feels, in a simple way, softish. The match's brief flare makes you think of factories. Long rooms filled with girls and women, hands moving quickly over dangerous materials. White phosphorus on match heads, fumes in the air, a disease that could eat away the jawbone. It is another quiet truth of Victorian life. The comforts of the middle and upper classes often rested on unseen suffering elsewhere. You hold the candle close and move carefully, mindful of flame. Fire is both friend and threat here. A candle can guide you. A candle can also catch lace or set a curtain-breathing flame. Even a bustle, made of wire and fabric, could brush a grate. The era's beauty was not always designed with safety in mind. Still, matches have their own history. You remember that earlier matches could contain white phosphorus. Factory workers who made them suffered terrible illnesses. A reminder that danger did not only live in grand inventions. Sometimes it lived in small conveniences carried in a pocket. You hold the candle carefully and step into the hallway. The corridor is darker than before, and the carpet runner turns your footsteps into hush. You move slowly, letting the candle lead. The main staircase is a pale shape in shadow, its banister catching the candlelight in thin highlights. You descend one step at a time. Household accidents were common. A slip on wood, a misjudged step, a skirt caught underfoot. You hold the banister, and you do not hurry. At the bottom, you turn toward the back of the house. You pass the dining room, now dim and orderly. You pass the drawing room, where embers glow like sleeping eyes. A baize door stands ahead, covered in green cloth, meant to muffle sound. It separates the world of family from the world of work. You press it open gently and step into the servants' realm. The air changes, cooler, plainer, walls painted rather than papered. Furniture functional. The kitchen opens before you, and in candlelight it looks like a sleeping workshop. A cast iron range dominates one wall, its fire banked down to warmth. Copper pots hang, dull and heavy. A broad wooden table holds scars from years of chopping and kneading. You set the candle down and listen. The quiet here is different, less polished, more honest. The kitchen, is one of the most dangerous rooms in a Victorian house. Open flames, boiling water, heavy iron, hot pans. Scalds and burns were common, and the air itself could be harsh, filled with smoke, steam, and coal dust. You imagine the cook and maids working from dawn until late, their hands red, their shoulders tight, their faces shining with heat. A small movement crosses the floor. A mouse, perhaps, then a pause. From a high cupboard, a kitchen cat watches you with patient eyes. Not a pet, exactly, but a worker like everyone else. In this house, even animals have duties. You step into the scullery. A stone sink sits under a window. A hand pump waits, stiff and practical. You imagine water being drawn again and again, carried in buckets, heated on the range, poured and carried once more. No easy taps, no constant hot water. The work is physical, repetitive, and never quite finished. Cold water would crack skin. Harsh lye soap would bite. A young scullery maid would stand here for hours, and the air would dampen her bones. The pantry sits nearby, shelves lined with jars, pickled vegetables, yums, flour, sugar, dried beans. Preservation is a constant Victorian concern. Without refrigeration, food must be smoked, salted, pickled, bottled, and even then, safety is uncertain. You notice the metal lids and think of solder. You think of lead again. The thought drifts through you like a slow cloud. There is a cellar door. Down there, you imagine damp stone steps and stored coal, and a smell of earth and mould. Victorian cellars could be breeding grounds for fungi. A musty air that clings to clothes and lungs. You decide not to go down. You have learned enough tonight. You turn back toward the baize door, letting the candle guide you home through the dark. Halfway back, you pause on the staircase. Your candle makes long shadows. The house feels enormous at night. And then you hear it, a small sound from the upper floor, a soft whimper, a child's voice folded into sleep. You climb again, slower now, and follow the sound toward the nursery. The nursery door is slightly ajar. Inside, in the dim candlelight, a small figure sits up in bed. A little girl with dark hair, eyes wet with tears. She looks at you and says, very softly, "Mama." The word lands with a quiet weight, not because it is true, but because she believes it. And belief, in the night, can feel like truth. You sit on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle the thin mattress. You smooth her hair back. Her skin is warm. You wonder about fever, because Victorian childhood was full of illnesses that moved quickly. Scarlet fever, measles, whooping cough, diphtheria, names that once walked through nurseries like quiet storms. You speak gently. It was only a dream. You are safe. You stay, and you listen to her breathing slow. As you sit with the child, you become aware of how Victorian parenting was shaped by fear. Not always spoken. Often hidden behind manners. When so many children did not survive to adulthood, affection could feel risky. And yet here, in the quiet of the nursery, affection also feels necessary. A simple hand held in the dark can be a kind of medicine. The candle flame trembles and steadies. In the corner, the rocking horse waits, painted bright, silent. You think again of lead in paint, and you feel a small protectiveness bloom in you. If the world is full of hidden dangers, then kindness must also be hidden everywhere, waiting to be chosen. You hold her hand until her fingers relax, until her face smooths, until her breath becomes the deep, even rhythm of sleep. At last, a night nurse appears, lamp in hand. Her voice is a whisper. She will stay with the child. You stand, joints stiff from sitting. You leave the nursery and return to your own room by memory, the candle casting warm islands of light along the corridor. On the way, the corridor carries a faint chemical smell, sharp and strange. You pause, and your mind immediately offers worries. Gas, smoke, something burning. You follow the scent to a small washroom where a man stands at a basin, mixing a draught by lamplight. He looks up, mildly surprised, and you recognize him as the household's master, your Victorian husband. He speaks with the calm authority of someone who belongs here. He explains that the doctor has prescribed him a sleeping mixture, a tincture of laudanum, perhaps, and chloral hydrate, measured with quiet confidence. The smell is unpleasant, he admits, but the sleep it brings is heavy and sure. You watch him drink it. and you feel the same gentle unease you felt before the medicine cabinet. In this century, sleep is sometimes purchased with chemicals. The body does not understand. He wishes you a formal good night, not the final farewell of the story, only a simple social phrase, and moves away toward his own room. Separate bedrooms are not unusual among the well-to-do. Privacy is preserved. Distance is respectable. You return to your chamber, and the smell fades behind you like a thought you do not wish to keep. Back in bed, you set the candle down and let the darkness gather again. The quilts press gently against your shoulders. The fire is only embers. The house is quiet. And now, with the child safe and the night's mysteries softened, your mind begins to loosen its grip. Thoughts slow. Breath slows. The Victorian night holds you, and you let yourself drift towards sleep, not fighting, not forcing, simply allowing until you settle once more, letting the last crisp edges of the evening dissolve. The candle stands nearby like a patient star. Your shoulders sink, your jaw loosens. Outside, the city keeps its distant, muffled life, but it no longer asks anything of you. Inside, the house simply holds its shape around you. You breathe in and you breathe out, and each breath feels a little slower. For now, rest here. The house does not truly sleep. It only changes its voice. Outside, the winter wind moves along the street like a slow, invisible carriage, brushing the brick facades, stirring soot in the gutters, worrying at loose window frames. Inside, the great rooms hold their breath. The curtains hang heavy. The carpets lie still. The clocks continue their patient work, one small tick after another, as if time itself is a servant making endless rounds. You wake again in the middle of the night, not with fear exactly, but with a quiet alertness, the kind that comes when the body senses something unfamiliar. The bed beneath you is firm and lumpy in places, horsehair and straw shifting when you move. The quilts are dense, warmed by your own heat, yet the air beyond them is cold, tasting faintly of coal, smoke, and beeswax, and old varnish. Your breath is pale in the darkness. For a moment you lie still, listening. Somewhere far below, a floorboard gives a soft complaint as the house settles. A distant drip answers it, steady and methodical, perhaps from a kitchen pump, perhaps from a pipe that does not quite know how to keep its secrets. Then there is silence again, wide and velvety. It is strange how quickly the mind adapts. Earlier, this place felt like a museum you had stumbled into. Now it feels like a world with rules you are beginning to understand. A world where the most dangerous things are not always loud. They are quiet. They wait in wallpaper, in paint, in lamp fittings, in bottles with polite labels. You sit up slowly. The mattress creaks. The cold reaches for your ankles. On the bedside table there is a matchbox, and you remember what you learned about matches, about factories, about jaws that ached and glowed in the dark. Aerosol, a small flame, is sometimes the only comfort a person can ask for. You strike a match carefully. It flares with a sharp, sulphur smell, then steadies. You light the candle. The wick catches, and a gentle amber circle blooms around you. The room appears again, softened, The wallpaper pattern becomes a field of shadows. The mirror reflects a wavering, slightly older version of your face. The fireplace is nearly dead, only a faint red seam among the coals. The washstand waits with its porcelain basin, as if morning might arrive at any moment and demand neatness. You pull on the dressing gown, thick wool that smells faintly of storage and lavender sachets. Your slippers whisper on the bare wood as you cross the room. You open the door, careful with the latch. The hallway is darker than your bedroom, the candlelight shrinking against the long corridor. The air here is cooler, and it carries a different scent, less domestic, more like dust and plaster and something metallic, perhaps from the gas pipes hidden in the wall. You begin to walk. The Victorian house is built like a story. Each room is a chapter, and each chapter has its own hidden footnote. You pass closed doors that hold sleeping guests, silent portraits, heavy furniture, and small dangers that do not announce themselves. A faint draught curls around your candle. The flame leans, then straightens, as if it too is listening. At the turn of the hallway, the nursery door is shut. You can imagine Charlotte inside, small and warm beneath her blankets, watched by a nurse whose lamp makes a steady island of light. You pause there without touching the handle. You do not want to wake the child, and you do not want to invite worry into her sleep. Instead, you let your hand rest on the wallpaper beside the door, not pressing, just hovering. Even that feels like a risk. Your mind remembers the green pigments, the arsenic, the damp walls. You continue. The stairs are waiting. In daylight, they seemed merely steep. At night, they looked like a narrow river of polished wood, descending into deeper shadow. You hold the banister, cold beneath your palm, and take each step slowly. The candle throws your silhouette across the wall, long and soft-edged, like a stranger walking beside you. Downstairs, the air is warmer, but not in a comforting way. It is the warmth of rooms that have been shut for hours, holding on to smoke and breath and the faint residue of gas. You notice it most when you pause. The candle flame is steady. Yet you cannot stop thinking about what you cannot see. A gas lamp turned too low. A valve that does not close properly. A pipe that sighs into the walls. In this era, people often went to bed with a mild headache and woke with none of their thoughts at all. You move toward the back corridor, past the formal dining room where the silver and crystal sleep in neat ranks, and into the servant side of the house. The change is immediate. The walls are plainer. The air smells of soap and damp cloth and boiled starch. The floorboards are more worn, the corners more honest. Here, beauty is not the first priority. Function is, survival is. The baize door waits, green fabric stretched over its frame to swallow sound. You push it and feel the thickness of it, the way it muffles your world when it closes behind you. You are in the working heart of the house now, where hands have been busy all day. Even at night, it feels awake. The kitchen is dark, but your candle makes small highlights on copper pans and iron hooks. The range is banked, the ash is pale, the iron still holding a stubborn warmth. A scent rises from it, not quite food, more like yesterday's smoke. Onion skins, bread crusts, and the mineral smell of coal. A mouse does not appear this time, but you notice tiny marks along the skirting board. The quiet evidence of life that eats when humans sleep. In the scullery, the stone sink is cold to the touch. The pump handle stands upright like an arm at rest. You imagine the youngest maid here, sleeves rolled, hands red from lye, shoulders aching from carrying water. She would have stood in this room through winter mornings, breath steaming, washing plates until her skin cracked. The household looks elegant because someone else's body has been used like a tool. On a shelf you find the flat irons again. Heavy metal shapes like small anvils. You picture them heating on the range, then being lifted with thick cloth, pressed down on linens that smell of soap and steam. You picture the mangles, the rollers, the fingers that could be caught, the bruises that could be explained away as clumsiness. So many Victorian dangers are not in the objects themselves, but in the way they require human effort, day after day, until the body becomes tired enough to slip. You step into the pantry. Glass jars hold preserves, each one a little sunset trapped behind a lid. But the lids are metal, and your mind thinks of lead solder, of slow poisoning that looks like fatigue. There is flour, sugar, even tea. You remember, could be stretched, tinted, made convincing with filings and dust. In this house, trust is a luxury. A narrow door at the end of the corridor suggests the cellar again. You do not open it. You imagine damp steps, mold in the corners, the heaviness of air that can make lungs feel smaller. You imagine coal stacked like black bricks, and you imagine the coal dust, the fine soot that settles in throats, in curtains, in the soft tissue of years. Instead, you return toward the main hall. Halfway there you hear a sound. It is not the settling of wood. It is not the drip. It is a soft cough, and then the faint rattle of a key in a gas lamp fitting. You pause, candle raised slightly, and watch the end of the corridor. A servant appears, a night footman perhaps, moving with practiced quiet. He carries a small shaded lamp. His face is calm, almost blank, as if expression is an item he left folded away. He sees you and stops, surprise flickering for a moment. A lady should not be here, not at this hour, not alone. Yet the house has already taught you that rules bend when no one is looking, and that every person is just trying to keep the night from becoming worse. He inclines his head. "Ma'am," he whispers, barely a sound. "Is all well?" You nod. You do not want a conversation. You do not want a parade of explanations. You simply want to understand the house, to map its shadows so they feel less sharp. The footman hesitates. Then, with the careful politeness of someone trained to fix problems without naming them, he says, "The gas is turned low for the night. Ma'am, best not to linger near the fittings. Some of them are temperamental. A gentle word for something that can steal breath. You thank him softly, and he moves on. His lamp retreats, and the corridor returns to its dimness. You stand still for a moment and let your breathing slow. The candle flame steadies. You can hear the great clock again, ticking like a distant heartbeat. The house is a body. You think. Pipes are veins. Chimneys are lungs. Fires are its heat. Servants are its hand. You are simply a guest inside it, trying to move without being swallowed. Before you return to your own bedroom, you take one more slow turn through the house, as if your feet are tracing a prayer. You find the narrow servant staircase, tucked away where guests would never look. The steps are steeper here, the wood more worn from hurried feet. Higher up, the warmth fades. The smell shifts from polish to laundry steam, damp wool, and the faint sourness of bodies asleep after work. Adur stans ayar. Inside, a small attic room holds two narrow beds, a shared blanket, a chair with a folded apron, and boots placed neatly side by side. The room is quiet except for breathing, soft and tired. You do not go in. You only look, and in that looking you understand another kind of danger, the slow danger of exhaustion. A maid who rises before dawn to light fires and haul water cannot always watch her step on a stair. A footman who polishes silver until his wrists ache cannot always notice a gas smell in time. In this era, fatigue is as deadly as poison. On the landing, you notice a bucket and a scoop of sand, kept for small fires, and beside it, a plain tin lantern. The Victorians lived with flame the way we live with electricity, close and constant. Candles, hearths, langes, gas jets that hiss like quiet snakes. A single spark in the wrong fabric, and an elegant room could become a furnace. You turn back down, slow and careful. When you reach the main hall again, you pause by the front door. It is locked, the bolt solid. Yet you can still feel the city beyond it. The soot, the damp air that creeps into foundations and makes wallpapers, breathe their colors into rooms. A house like this is not sealed. It takes in the world and holds it. Only then do you return upstairs, carrying that thought as lightly as you can. Back in your room, you close the door and set the candle down. The flame makes the familiar objects gentle again. You loosen the dressing gown at your throat and sit at the edge of the bed. Your thoughts drift to Charlotte, to her small, warm hand in yours, to the future that waits for her in this era of strict rules and unseen poisons. You think of her toys, painted bright, sweet with lead. You think of the milk she might drink, stretched and cleaned in ways that only disguise its danger. You think of and then, because the mind seeks balance, you think of the things that are beautiful here, even when they are dangerous. The craftsmanship of the banister, the embroidered linens, the way a room can be arranged like a painting, the way a household runs on ritual, the same actions repeated until they become a kind of music. You stand at the bedroom window for a moment. The glass is cold. Behind the curtain, the night street is a blur of fog and lamplight. You let the silence settle, and you feel your pulse slow with it. It is enough. You lie down again, slowly, letting the mattress take your weight. You blow out the candle, and the smoke curls upward, thin and pale. Darkness returns, thick as velvet. The quilts settle around you. The cold air at the edge of the bed feels distant now, because your body has found its small island of warmth. Somewhere below, a servant turns a key, checks a door, banks a fire. Somewhere outside, a carriage wheel whispers on cobblestone and fades. The house continues its quiet breathing. You let the sound of it carry you, like a slow tide. And as you drift, you tell yourself something simple, something steady. In this place, Awareness is not panic. It is just noticing. Noticing the cold wood underfoot. Noticing the smell of coal smoke. Noticing the soft hazards, and then letting them pass, like thoughts that do not need to be held. Your breathing grows deeper. Your shoulders sink. The night becomes a long, gentle corridor, and you walk it without effort, without fear, until you no longer need to walk at all. Morning arrives, the way it always does in this century, not with an alarm, but with work. A soft knock, a pause, then the door opens, and a maid slips in with the careful quiet of someone who has spent her life moving around other people's sleep. She draws back the curtains, and pale winter light pours into the room, cold and clear, revealing the textures you could only guess at in candlelight. Dust motes drift in the beam like slow snow. The fire, banked through the night, is coaxed awake again. Coal settles, kindling catches. A small crackle rises, warm and familiar. The maid asks about tea, about washing water, about the day, and her voice is calm, almost neutral, as if emotion would be an unnecessary ornament. You answer as simply as you can. You do not ask for a full bath. You remember the buckets, the stairs, the effort. You ask for the basin, and she brings it, porcelain bright against dark wood, steam lifting in delicate curls. You wash your face with water that is hot for a moment, then quickly cooling, because this house cannot hold heat the way your own home can. The soap is harsh, smelling of lye and fat, and it leaves your skin a little tight. You brush your teeth with powder that tastes faintly chalky. You do everything slowly, as if slowness is a kind of kindness, both to yourself and to the hands that serve you. When dressing begins, you let it be a ritual rather than a struggle. The corset is tightened just enough to give shape, not enough to steal breath. Petticoats settle. A morning dress is buttoned. Your body feels wrapped, supported, and slightly restricted, like a letter folded into its envelope. Downstairs, the morning room waits with its smaller table and its steady routines. Charlotte is there today. She sits with a straight back and a serious face, practicing the quiet manners expected of her. A nanny watches nearby, composed as a carved figure. Charlotte smiles when she sees you, a brief brightening that feels like a candle in a dim hall. You speak with her softly. You ask about her lessons, scripture, French, a little arithmetic, then music, scales, repeated until fingers learn obedience. Her education is not meant to make her free. It is meant to make her suitable. A future wife, a future mother, a future manager of a household like this one, carrying heavy keys on her belt and heavier rules in her mind. A maid brings a calling card. Another visitor. Another obligation. It is as if the house itself produces social demands, the way a fireplace produces smoke. You decline again, and you feel the odd relief of refusing something you do not truly belong to. Charlotte goes out for a walk with the nanny, dressed like a tiny adult, hat and gloves, her coat buttoned high at the throat. When the front door closes behind them, the house changes mood. It becomes quieter, emptier, as if it has misplaced one of its small essential pieces. You decide to explore again. but this time with daylight. In the corridor, you notice where the wallpaper has bubbled slightly, where damp has kissed it. The green looks more vivid in sunlight, and you are reminded again that beauty can be made from substances no one understands yet. You keep your hands to yourself. You keep your distance. That small restraint feels like wisdom. You walk into the nursery while it is empty, and you look at the toys with different eyes. Painted wood, bright colors, a doll with porcelain cheeks. You imagine a child chewing on a toy in boredom and swallowing tiny flakes of lead paint. You imagine a mother noticing only that her child seems tired. Irritable, slow to learn. In this era, the link is not clear. It will take decades of observation, tragedy, and argument to turn invisible harm into public knowledge. From the nursery you move toward the kitchen wing, where the air smells of bread and soap and wet cloth. In the scullery, a young maid scrubs a pot, her sleeves rolled up, her wrists red. The sound of scrubbing is rhythmic, almost soothing, a steady rasp that matches your breathing. Steam rises from water and makes the window fog, and the room feels like a private weather system, warm and damp, filled with labor. Laundry is being done today. You can tell by the smell of hot water and starch, by the presence of damp linens, by the way the servants move with heavy baskets. Washing is not a simple task here. It is an operation, water drawn, heated, carried, soap made from lye, cloth boiled, fabric wrung, pressed, and ironed with heavy irons, heated on coal. It is work that wears hands and shoulders. It is also work that can injure, scales, burns, crushed fingers, strained backs. The clean tablecloth at dinner has a history written in aching wrists. A cook moves past with a tray and nods without meeting your eyes. Hierarchy is built into every movement. Even air seems arranged by class. In a small pantry you notice jars sealed with metal lids. In the cellar you imagine damp and mold. In the coal store you see the black lumps that feed the fires, and you think of the dust that will float into lungs, settle on curtains, stain wallpaper, and become part of the city itself. Later, when you return to the main rooms, the difference is striking. Here, the surfaces shine. Here, the air is scented with beeswax and polish. Here, pain is meant to be invisible. The house is a stage, and the servants are its hidden machinery. Afternoon arrives, and with it a familiar heaviness in the light. Winter makes every day feel shorter. The sky outside is pale, and the soot in the air turns it even softer. You sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the street. Carriages pass. A boy runs with newspapers. A woman in a shawl pauses by a vendor. The world is busy, but the sound is not sharp. There are no engines, no electronic hums, only hooves, wheels, distant voices, and the occasional call of a hawker. In this slower soundscape, your thoughts begin to drift. You think of how many dangers you have noticed in a single day. Pigments that hide poison, gas that can steal breath, food that can be stretched with strange powders, water that can carry disease, medicines that comfort and harm at once, objects made with pride and ignorance, because ignorance is not shameful. It is simply a stage of learning. You also think of how resilience lives in ordinary people. The maid who lights fires before dawn. The scullery girl who scrubs until her fingers crack. The cook who stands near heat for hours. The child who learns to sit still and play quietly, because that is what good children do. The whole household moves like a clock, and each person is a gear. As evening approaches, the gas lamps are lit again. The hallway turns amber. Shadows soften. The room becomes warm and theatrical. The very beauty of it makes you understand why people trusted it. Light that arrives at the turn of a key feels like progress. Yet your body holds a small caution, the way a hand holds a rail on a stair. You open a window for a moment, just a finger's width, and let fresh air slip in. Cold, clean, honest. Dinner comes and goes. The courses are careful. The utensils are many. The posture is strict. Afterwards, the drawing room welcomes you again with its fire and ticking clock. The servants move quietly as they prepare the house for sleep. Fires are banked. Doors are checked. Lamps are turned low. The city outside settles into its darker hours. When you return upstairs, you find Charlotte already in her room, tucked in, watched by the nurse. The child looks drowsy, her eyes heavy, her cheeks warm. You sit beside her for a few minutes and let her talk about her walk, about a bird she saw, about a ribbon the nanny adjusted. Her voice is small and steady, and listening to her is like listening to rain on a roof. Soon her words slow, her eyelids close, her breathing deepen. You stand quietly, and you leave her to her sleep without adding worry to it. Back in your room, you undress with help, then you are finally alone. The corset is gone. Your ribs expand. Your nightgown is soft. You sit at the edge of the bed and watch the fire fade to embers. The room cools. The darkness gathers. The wavy mirror reflects a dim shape and then nothing. Before you climb into bed, you do one last small round of the room, the way you might check a door in your own home. On the washstand, the basin has cooled. A thin skin of steam has vanished, leaving only the faint mineral smell of boiled water. You run your fingers along the rim and think about where this water has been. In many houses, it sits in tanks that are lined with metal, and metal, in this era, is often softened with lead. Lead does not announce itself. It does not sting the tongue. It simply lingers, slow as dust, and the body learns its presence only after months, after years, when fatigue becomes a normal thing, near the bed, tucked discreetly under a skirted frame. The chamber pot waits. Plain, practical, humiliating only if you insist on judging it. You think of how close the Victorians lived to their own waste, how sanitation was a daily negotiation rather than an invisible system. The water closet you found earlier is a marvel, but it is also a doorway to unseen air. Sewer gases can creep back up. Methane can gather. A simple candle flame, held too near, could meet that invisible breath and turn it into fire. You glance toward the fireplace and imagine the chimney above it, the long dark passage where smoke travels. If soot builds, the spark can catch it, and a chimney fire can roar through brick like a hidden storm. This house is beautiful, yet it is always in conversation with flame. On the dressing table sits a small brush and a jar of pomade. The scent is faintly floral, like roses pressed into fat. Victorian hair oils could be heavy, and powders could be harsh. You picture a lady pinning her hair by gaslight, her fingers dusted with powder, her skin pale with a cosmetic that promises refinement. Even refinement, you remember, could contain strange ingredients. The century wants beauty to last, and sometimes it uses chemistry before it understands what chemistry can do. You open the window just a handspan. Cold air slips in and touches your face, clean and sharp. The outside smells of damp stone, coal, smoke, and distant horses. Somewhere, a constable calls quietly to another, the sound carried along the street. You close the window again, not sealing yourself away, just returning to the room's slow warmth. You feel the room exhale, slow. You lie down, and you let the mattress take your weight. It is not luxurious, but it is steady. The quilts press down with a gentle heaviness. You feel your body settling, as if it is finding a place it can belong for a while. And then, without warning, you notice how quiet your mind has become. It is as if the house has taught you to think more slowly, to notice, to release. The day has been full of details, yet the details do not feel sharp anymore. They feel like soft objects laid on a table. You can look at them, and then you can leave them there. Your breathing becomes deeper. Your shoulders sink. Your hands rest open on the blanket. The wind touches the window and makes a faint rattle, but it is no longer startling. It is only the house speaking its language. In that calm, another thought arrives, gentle and clear. You will not stay here forever. This Victorian house is a lesson, not a prison. It is a place that shows you, in slow, careful scenes, how modern safety was earned. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide alarms, lead-free paint, food regulations, clean water systems. These things are quiet miracles, built from knowledge and from the hard memories of those who lived without them. You picture your own home, whatever shape it takes. Familiar bed, a light switch, warmth that arrives without someone carrying coal, water that runs clear, medicine measured and tested. You feel gratitude spread through you, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like warmth returning to fingers. The fire in your mind dims. The Victorian room begins to blur, not as a sudden break, but as a slow softening. The edges of furniture lose definition. The wallpaper pattern becomes a wash of color. The ticking clock sounds farther away. You are still here, and yet you are also drifting, as if sleep itself is a carriage taking you across time. You do not fight it. You let your body become heavier. You let your breath deepen. You let the quilts press you into the bed. You let your thoughts slow until they are hardly thoughts at all, only quiet shapes passing through a warm darkness. At last, the house is no longer around you as a solid place. It is a memory, a scent of coal smoke, a flicker of gaslight, a child's warm hand, a corridor of green wallpaper, a candle held steady against a long night, and then there's only your own breathing, and the soft sense of being safe, carried by the quiet progress of years. Good night.